All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm Kristan Kershaw and joined by my co-host, Suzanne Culberg. Today, we are talking about knowing if someone is the right coach for you. But more to the point, what are we over when it comes to this? Like, the podcast is called Over It. So we're going to make sure that we're weaving in a little bit more on what are we over when it comes to this. And Suze, I love this. Sue said, I'm over people throwing money at a problem and expecting a solution versus doing the work that actually needs to happen. So both of us have had experiences in this regard, both personally as the person throwing money or whatever and going, please fix this, or having people come to us and expecting a magic wand to be waved and that just booking in for something, whether it's a consult, whether it's a series of working with one of us, whether it's, yeah, this program will fix things, but I'm not going to do the things. And, you know, as I said that, I'm like, hang on, me and Why Wait last year, there was at least one where I just had so much on with my external work. I didn't expect it to magically change, but I was hoping for more progress. But I'm like, oh, hang on a minute. It didn't take me very long to go, Kristan, you need to make the effort. And so I learned from that. So that was my lesson, right?
I think that's the magic, though, as in when you learn from it, it becomes a lesson. I need to prioritize not just my budget, like the money exchange, but the time and also the energy. And we've done a whole episode on capacity that a change will require, because it's, you know, there are some instances where that isn't the case. It can be quite transactional. I'm trying to think. You go to a restaurant and you order a meal. You don't have to be involved in the preparing of the meal. It comes to you at the table and you just consume it, which is why, speaking of over it, I don't know if they took off up there, if you know what I'm talking about, but there was one stage where there was these restaurants called Hot Rock, where they would literally bring you out a heated rock and your steak or whatever, and you like cooked it and then you could eat it. And I remember being like, if I wanted to cook my own fucking meal, I would have done it at home. So whenever anyone invited me to the Hot Rock, I was like, thank you, but no thanks. So this is an example of this, is in, if I'm choosing to partake in eating out, I don't want to be involved in any of the preparation. But in the case of a program, and Why Wait's a perfect example, and that you're not the only one. Many people have around where they're like, oh, I actually need to, like, not just listen to the recordings, but like do some shit. It's like, yeah, you got to do some shit. And I'm not judging. I've been there too. Before we hit record, I'll use myself as an example. My business has had many iterations of my website. I've worked with some fabulous people. Shout out to everybody along the journey who supported me on the many iterations of my website. Very early on in business, I didn't really understand. And this is the thing, you don't know what you don't know. So I remember when I hired my first person, and this is all about communication as well, they were like, it's this many dollars and this is what you get. I'm like, okay, cool. So I paid my invoice. Where's my website? And it's like, well, you need to provide me with colors and photos and fonts and copy. And I was like, don't you do that? Now, many years later and many iterations and many websites later, I have a whole different understanding. So I think sometimes it is a lack of communication or expectation on both sides. But sometimes it's like, you know, especially if you look at some copy for some programs or whatever, like I did this and I magically lost X kilos by just drinking this skinny pink drink, or I, you know, tapped my 3 spots and now I earn 6 figures a month because I've, you know, got the power of this. And then it's like, there's more to it than this. Like sometimes there's false advertising too. So when our podcast, although we're over things, it's never to judge or shame or make anyone feel like shit, because, you know, we're human too. We've been there. But it's about discussing, like, what is it about these things on both ends that cause people to be over it?
Yeah, absolutely. And where we want you to come in is find the right coach for you, which aligns with where you're at, because you may not be ready for working with a coach, or you might be so ready and the coach is actually on a different journey for you, and a different person might match better anyway. So it's it's a dual factor of, is Suze the right coach? Am I the right coach, or is someone else the right coach for you for where you're at right now? Because wherever you're at, you may need something different to help you on your path. Sometimes a match with the wrong person is actually the best match for you, or what your perception, like this is a really good example of perception versus reality. Many years ago, I did a coaching course, a life coaching course, and I wonder if the person who I'm about to talk to about will listen to this. I think she'll smile if she does. I did the course, and at the end of that, you got 11 coaching sessions about once a fortnight, I think it was, with a coach at the end, and they would help you through. And we had been coached during the event. It was a 5-day event. During that, by a group of people, we had different, masters in the field and whatever, but there was a main lady who ran it, and then a few others that were in the periphery. And I was like, I think she'd be a really good match for me. I didn't really have it in my awareness exactly how the last bit worked. I just knew that I would work with someone. I think probably in my expectations, I just assumed that it might be her. But again, there were quite a few of us. There's only so many hours in the day. So I got someone who I didn't really know. I had met her very briefly during the event. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, it was just different from expectations. I wasn't sad or upset, but I was like, oh, I had painted in my brain that I needed that particular lady to coach me. But you know what? I got the best ever business coach and now accountant. She's an accountant who's trained in it. And she's been working with me for, what are we? Just over 6 years now. And
that's incredible. That's like the universe having your back if I.
Oh, phenomenal. Like if anyone ever needs a really good accountant and business coach from like an accounting point of view, I can totally shout out to Rachel Forward.
It's like, if you know who you are, and now I'm just going to name drop you.
Yeah, I'm just going to name you. But I don't know if Rachel listens or not. But anyway, she's phenomenal. But that sometimes things step in at the right time, and you may at the time be like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. But the universe is pretty amazing. And I've learned from my kids' journey, actually, or from my experience in the early days of my twins and then later the little one, that you at some point learn to surrender in and go, well, this is happening for a reason. Maybe it's not what I expect. So you might book in with a coach thinking this person is amazing and all the rest of it, and then come to realize that you don't really align with them, that you don't. And the reverse obviously happened to me, because I found someone that was beautifully aligned and had everything I needed and then some. But it wasn't what I thought in the first place. So I had to realign what my expectations were at that point. And you might find that part of your journey is, I booked in with this person and did a session with them. And then you go, I don't know that this is a good match for me, no matter what type of coaching. But then trusting your gut instinct that that isn't a good match is just as powerful and important of your journey, potentially, as what it is to, are you going to keep paying the money when your gut feel is going, something is not right here? Something, that they're trying to sell you something that is too it sounds too good to be true. Yes, you can do these shakes and you'll always be skinny. No, and again, we're picking examples out of that are not exactly what programs are, the whole programs typically, but does that feel right? Does that in your gut, if you're in whatever program or working with someone as a coach, whatever, does it feel right for where you're at? Are they helping you to make progress in the direction you want to go? Do you know where you want to go? And if not, are you just kind of drifting on? Because there might be a time where you need someone who's got your back and is guiding you, because you can't see the forest for the trees. But there can also be just as much, you need to be challenged in order to grow.
Yeah, we've done an episode on that too. Listeners, Prune in Order to Grow was an episode we did. But this all has me thinking about, and we had a conversation for another episode we're going to record, but it fits in here in terms of, we were talking earlier today, just us personally, about best practice versus trusting your instinct over what some expert told you. So if you're shopping for a coach, because, face it, is an investment of time, it's going to be an investment of money and energy. So you're looking around and you look at the website and you love the claims, as in the working together, this is what we will achieve. but somewhere in your body, you're having a visceral, like, there's something fishy here. It feels artificial. It feels too good to be true. And then you look a bit deeper, and sometimes some of these claims have a tiny little asterisk next to them that says results not typical. Maybe you can send an email in and say, hey, what are some typical results, or what could I expect? Or, can I get on a call? And just ask the question. So when you get on a call, are you speaking to the person that you will be working with? Because I think, for me, like, I love you had that amazing experience with Rachel Ford. I've heard awesome things. I feel like I know her. A few people work with her, and it's kind of like when we eventually cross paths, or just be like, I just know you. It's weird. Anyway, if you're listening to this, that's how I roll, people. But sometimes it doesn't work. It's not the right fit. It's not this. And then we think, and depending on how it's been marketed and who it is, well, you're just not trying hard enough, or you just don't want it enough, or you just have blocks. Like, what am I over? We could do a whole episode of that. Oh, you just got, money blocks or whatever. It's like, no, you've got a piss poor business model. Like, so anyway, it's getting off topic, but it's kind of
not that you've had any experience there, right?
No, not at all. But it is it a fit? And I had a very, very recent experience, and I don't know if this person listens to my podcast, and if you do, shout out, you'll know who you are, you're amazing. Wanted to talk to me about one-on-one coaching, which I do still do. I have limited capacity for it because, as you were saying, so many hours in the day and this sort of stuff. But in the past, I've had some experiences, and I think, you spot it, you got it. And I've, as I said, with my website, I've also been on the other end wanting this. Here's my money now. Do the thing. Do the thing. Where people have bought the package and then failed to turn up to the sessions, or turn up to the sessions and been late and then not have done anything. And like, these are all things that we can coach through. Like, this is what you hire me for, but just aren't wanting to change or take responsibility or whatever. And it just feels like Groundhog Day every single week. And then kind of get towards the end of the package and be like, well, what are you going to do about it? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, so with this particular person, we got chatting, and she was saying, like, I don't follow through on things. And that could be great. You've come to the boundary as fuck person. Let's go. But to me, it was like, it was just a little niggle to be like, maybe it could be the perfect time, or it might not be. So instead of closing or pushing or whatever, I actually did the opposite. I slowed down the process, didn't even pitch. I said, okay, so what kind of things do you want? In 6 months together, where would you like to be? And she told me, and we broke it down into these little pillars. And I was like, these are the steps I'd like you to take. They should take about a week. Reach back out to me, and then we can talk about next steps. Because when you think about it, when you're investing with a coach, especially one-on-one, not a program, but one-on-one, you're in each other's pocket for, in my case, 6 months. If it's not the place where you can be totally honest, and it's not the place where I can be totally honest, and we have some weird kind of people-pleasing dance going on, it's not getting either of us where we want to go. Like, I love not pulling punches, as in like just saying the thing. And like, wouldn't say I'm not malicious or rude or whatever, but I can be blunt and direct. And also for the person, like, I don't, and the other thing that she said, which I loved, is like, she's like, I don't want a cheerleader. I don't want somebody every week to say, oh, it's okay, all this happened, like, an enabler or whatever. I want someone who's going to be like, hold up, you said. But for me, this moment of go and do these things and come back is the test. If this is what you're saying you want, do you really want it? Because sometimes, like, I know in terms, I used to be a weight loss coach, and people would always say, almost every single consult and chat, if I could just pay someone to follow me around and slap biscuits out of my hand. And it's like, no, you would just fire them, and then you would hire someone else, and you'd tell everybody how terrible they were. Because, are you really wanting to get under this? Because it's hard. It's work.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's another aspect to this, like when someone comes to work with myself or one of my team members with the mineral side of things, you can be really overwhelmed. So actually working with either of us, this doesn't matter, right? That scenario that you were just giving, Suze, where someone, and not necessarily even the lady that you're speaking to there, just in general, right? I sometimes am like, really time poor and I come just after the hour, I will normally warn you because I'm going from meeting to meeting. So, and I know that I forego that 5 minutes, whatever it might be, but I will still be doing the work all the time, chipping away at things and giving you updates and that sort of thing. So I'm making the most of what I can with the scenario, whereas someone who, there's a difference between having a lot on and having blocks where you don't set aside the time to do it. I squeeze every little bit out and we'll slot it in where I can. Is that ideal in every scenario? No, I'm the first to admit that. You know, you're working on yourself, what you need to learn.
Like what you've spoken about on the podcast before, it's like sometimes we create the blocks. I hate that term, but people understand it, is in by overcommitting. And you and I are both famous for, it's like, fit your big rocks first. It's like, see, that's the problem. The container's this big and there's too many rocks.
Yeah, so I have like too many of them.
Overcommitting.
Definitely.
What am I overcommitting myself is something, and does it have to be this hard? It's like, no. And I think for anybody who has a tendency to this, and I imagine we'll have a lot of listeners because you tend to attract the people who are like you. If you are feeling overwhelmed because you're overcommitted, because you're doing too much and it feels like nothing's working, or it's working but not to where you thought it would. Some of you may hate me for this, but anyway, I'm actually really glad. And before you like unplug and throw things and give us a 1-star review or whatever, if that had worked, if you had achieved the success, whether it be weight loss, number of clients, financial, or whatever, that you had hoped for by doing that, you would think that that's what you need to do for the rest of your life. As to quote The Mandalorian, you'd be like, this is the way. That is not the way. Like, you can do so much with less, like naps, rest, walks, movies, games, fun. Like, that's the other thing too. If it's not fun, I don't want to do it. But it's not, I think a lot of fun has been linked to irresponsibility. Well, it's nice for you, Suze. You can just go flake off and whatever. But it's like, you don't, if you think that you have to absolve yourself from all this and work, and then you have some meter of success, that's just setting you up for a life of that. And that just sounds exhausting and draining. And no.
Totally. And you may think, well, I don't have time for a coach. Or I don't, because I'm overwhelmed, I can't just do anything else. But what if working with that coach helps you to simplify? And this is what I love about what we do together for me, for my own, because I absolutely have Suze as my one-to-one coach, just like I help her with her minerals. And I am actively working on finding ways to simplify rather than overcomplicate things, because I do enough of that all by myself. But the beauty of it is, just like we talk about on this podcast all the time, one little change can make the world of difference. So, for instance, I've been simplifying this year with the number of meetings that I've been doing, and it's crept up again, and I've got constant meetings in one thing or another. But what I've done in the choices of the meetings that I'm doing is I'm doing things that I would sometimes otherwise have been doing late at night before a meeting or whatever. There's so many things that I'm now doing in advance. So I'm working during business hours a lot more closer. And so while I'm still doing longer days than I will in the long run, I've made such huge progress by doing little shifts so that the focus of the meetings that I'm doing is clearer and more appropriate. And the meetings are bite-sized chunks, so to speak, so that, okay, what's going, it's more what's on the agenda for today, and there's more structure to it and that sort of thing. Whereas it can feel huge if you've got heaps of things to do and the overwhelm is real. But working with a coach can help you to find what it is that you need at that time. So finding someone who's on the same sort of page, but who will challenge you. If we come back to the original topic of today, how do you know if someone's the right coach for you? You want someone who's going to potentially push the buttons of you into the discomfort of something that maybe you want to do, but you're not sure how. But you also need for them to be realistic and to dance the tango with you rather than be sort of throwing you off the deep end where you're going to run the other way and it's too far, the gap is too big for where you're at.
Yeah, I love how you want someone who's unafraid to say the thing. Like, it's funny, we may appear unafraid to say the thing. Inside, sometimes we're shitting ourselves. Like, it's like, this could go very badly. I'm risking a relationship here, but I need to call it what I see it, because you don't need a cheerleader. And I think sometimes when we go to a coach who isn't the right fit, like that's another thing I said with this person yesterday, when she talked about the things she wanted to do at the end of 6 months, there was 4 main categories. And I was thinking, given that she had also led with, I find it hard to follow through on things, that was a big ask. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's a big ask. So the other thing that I asked her to do before we speak again is to rank them in order of priority and to put them into columns potentially of what's perfect and unrealistic here, what would be ideal and what's truly good enough. Because I think for all of us, whether you're hiring a coach or thinking of hiring either of us or just listening to this, sometimes we put pressure on ourselves. Like, in 6 months' time, I'm going to have started a podcast, written a book, redone my website. These are all things that I've done over the last 2 years that, I will be honest, I thought I could have done in 3 months after working at something that, was unrealistic. Why do you think I can speak to it? And then when you don't do them, you feel like this world's biggest failure. And it's like, if I'd had a coach who actually hadn't cheerlead and rah-rah, and you can do it at me, and I got off the calls like, what do I do now? And had someone who said, look, Suzanne, these are all very big undertakings. Which one is your priority? And what is your priority too? So, for example, when I published my book, I actually started writing it back in 2018. And I don't know if I've shared it here. I'm not sure if I've shared it with you. I've shared it somewhere. I've done lots of podcast guesting. At the time when I was writing it, my husband got made redundant. So I was the primary income earner. Writing a book where you make $1 or $2 per sale is not really going to pay rent and feed a family of 4. So the book got parked because my priority at the time was then income. So I think sometimes when we're doing something, a podcast or a book or something that is a labor of love, and yes, will bring leads over time, and you're contributing to society, but is it putting food on your table? Not directly and not initially. So it's like, what is it that you want in this time that you're working with the person? And does the person have the experience to say to you, that is a wonderful thing, and giving back I love and appreciate, but right now maybe this isn't the best use of your time at this very moment. And having a person who risks saying that to you, it's like, but I love writing my book and it's fun and it's this and it's that. And it's like, yeah, but it's hard. You're not always going to like your coach, but likes button on Facebook.
I love that. I love that. So again, no matter whether you're looking to work with Suze, with myself in minerals, with some other, like a PT, personal trainer type coach, this does not matter who it applies to, but you need someone who's going to stretch you but meet you at the same time. Because for example, when you do the mineral side of things, especially if you've never really paid attention to the food that you eat to any great degree, which heaps of people out there, and there's such a spectrum of people who eat mostly packet food or takeaway, through to people who do a lot of their own cooking but might use jars or packets or whatever to help, through to people who do most things from scratch, through to hardcore people who will, I probably find myself between the last two, who know their farmers or source stuff very specifically, cook much of it from scratch, and really, really, I will never touch this, and this because it's not, ancestral food. I find myself, or, whatever type of food that they're looking at, I find myself somewhere in there. I've just had a couple of days away at the time of recording, and we ate food local to where we were, and I can't be sure where that came from, and I'm pretty confident that there was so much sugar in that compared to what I've probably eaten in the last year. But good, better, best, right? When you're doing something, you need someone who, again, is going to go, hey, this didn't go ideally, but what do you want to do most of the time? What can we do to bridge from where you are here to where you would like to be, and help you? I've said so many times over the years, I'm not here to be someone's guru to tell them all of the magical things that they think they want to hear. I'm here to help you understand what minerals do in your body, where your minerals are at based on your testing, what stress has to do with that, because FYI, if you haven't picked it up by now and you haven't listened to earlier episodes, it's heavily related. If you start to understand, especially how that stress impacts on the nutrients that are already in your body, it will change the choices that you make of the foods that you get day to day and of the food that you choose to prepare versus buy. And it's all on little bite-sized decisions, and that's not overwhelming. If you can make one choice, will I buy spray-free apples this week? Okay, I'm at the shops and I see there's some organic ones or whatever. Great. One little decision, one little shift in the direction that you want to go versus sitting stuck somewhere and someone just saying, well, you're a failure because you didn't do it and whatever. I've seen coaching styles where it speaks down at someone saying, come on, you can work harder, you can do it. And the person just feels like a failure because they haven't done it. I've had clients of mine, not come back for subsequent little, we've got bite-sized chunk sessions for an extended time because they're like, oh, well, I hadn't really done what we talked about and I didn't want to basically let me down. And I'm like, well, you might let yourself down a bit, but I'm here to be keeping you on track as best I can from a redirection that I can't do the work. If you haven't done it, that's okay. I'm not going to punish you for it.
I think that's the thing. I think there's some conditioning over time, like maybe from earlier school days. It was interesting just this morning, at the time of recording this, we're coming close to Easter and we're creating the hats for the Easter hat parade. I cannot wait. Follow me on socials if you want to see all will be revealed. Well, you probably have to scroll back by the time we publish this. But anywho, for some reason, the kids are wanting to learn to touch type. And I was saying that didn't happen for me until older grades because, they're like, why? I'm like, because computers weren't around. Anyway, for some reason, the mention of the cane came up. And when I was in very early school, they still had the cane. And the kids were like, well, what is it? And I was like, well, basically like, a wooden stick that you got whacked with. And they were like, but why would you do that? Anyway, what was this related to? Oh, the punishment. So like if you hadn't done your homework, you would get the cane. And I wonder how often do we come up with ridiculous excuses for things because we want to avoid the punishment. But if you go to your coach and go, look, here was the plan, like, to introduce this magnesium or whatever. And then I may not be speaking from personal experience here, but I tried to make it and it went all fizzy and there was a giant mess on the floor. And then, then we can go, oh, okay, and talk through that. How much did you put in? Well, this. Well, why did you do that? Because I read this. No, it's actually this measurement, not that, where somebody had put teaspoon instead of tablespoon instead of teaspoon. Anyway, I digress. But by being that level of honest, the same as if people work with me, it's kind of like sometimes I may gently probe and say, these all sound wonderful. I think it may be a little bit much. And people are like, no, I'll be fine. And then they go away and it is a little bit much. Then come back and we can tweak. I think what we tend to do is rip out entire foundations over and over and over again and then feel like we're in the same place every time instead of the building blocks of, okay, this was the plan. It actually was too big of it wasn't a step, as you were saying. It was more like a leap and I'd require a cape, Superman style. So what would be a step? And also too, sometimes you take the steps and you're like, actually, this didn't liven me up. I don't want to do that. Like the number of people who, especially with businesses, like I like doing this for fun or I like doing this as a hobby, but I don't want to do that as an ongoing thing. But the thing is celebrating the fact that you gave it a crack and realized that rather than living in the one day.
Yep. And I think a lot of the time people will, for lack of a better description, forgive themselves for making a choice in other ways where they go, well, it didn't work. All right, move on. But when it comes to something as big as getting a coach to help us with, again, mindset, food or nutrients or exercise, like it doesn't matter what type. We can be really hard on ourselves. Well, I didn't do it perfectly. I didn't do it the way we've discussed. Is that not part of the learning journey? Okay, why? What can we look at to find, was that too big of a step for you at this point in time? Was there some other barrier? That's what a coach who's matched to you is likely to be doing, not reprimanding you and whatever, because shame gets you nowhere and making you feel smaller by a coach gets you nowhere. So aim for people that are lifting you up, not inflating you for the sake of ego boosting or whatever. That's the other extreme. But I think finding someone who you resonate with is so key to, and have a discovery call, or most coaches will offer a short conversation to see whether it's matched, because it goes two ways. It may not be that, there may be someone that you meet with and they say, you know what, I'm not sure that this is the best match for you, like what you were saying, Susan, and I'm not saying that this other client may not be a good match, but they may ask you questions, and that may have you going, I don't know if this is the right time for me, right, whatever.
Right time, the right coach too. Like the number of people I have been like, actually, I think you would be better suited with this person. Like I know, coaches hang out with coaches. We know each other. And the ability to refer on to a better fit is in interest of both parties, because then the client is getting the best, their needs met and the best fit for them. And then the coach is too, because we're spending that time with you each week or fortnight or how often you coach together. But the other point that you made that I really want to bring home is how you thought it would go in situ, like in session, like when we plan it out, versus how it actually goes is the reason you hire the coach. If you just listen to a podcast or read a book and go, they say do X, Y, and Z, and I go and do X, Y, and Z, and then it doesn't work, and then I scratch that and throw it out. If you have the coach, it's like, actually, sometimes maybe it's X, Y, and A, or maybe X, Y, and Z was too much in this period of time. So let's just back it way back and just do X and then add on Y. Like it's the making the plan, testing it, evaluating it, and then going out again. And then even then, like, it's like, it makes me think of parenting, when you have a young baby and you think, I've cracked the code, I've just got to do this. And then like 1 week later, or maybe 5 minutes later, it's like, what? They used to love the binky and the song and this, and now they won't sleep. It's a regression. And next thing you're up at 2 a.m. Googling the sleep regression. Like having the coach to be like, no, this is fine. This happens. You're not losing it. There's nothing wrong here. It's just like, oh my goodness, I'm not alone. That is worth its weight in gold. Like, it's why I always work with a business coach, because we all have the moments where we're like, that's it. I'm quitting. I'm going to go and stock shelves or deliver newspapers or something. My business period happens about once a month. We all go through it.
And if you're feeling challenged by your coach, keep it in mind, is the gut feel that there's an issue, or are they just challenging you? Because it could be that you're just about to have a breakthrough, and that your frustration at that moment, not necessarily at them or whatever, just where you're at, if you're doing the things, is this the right thing for me to be doing? Yes or no? Does this feel right? As in, okay, I feel like I should be here doing this, but it's just not meshing. Maybe it's because there's a lesson in that's just right on the threshold there. So don't discount that that's your lesson.
If you have that conversation with your coach, like if you don't feel that you can converse with them, because like, as you said, breakdown before the breakthrough, it's darkest before the dawn. When people come to me and say like, I wish I hadn't signed up for this round, or this isn't where I thought I'd be, and whatever, I love that they have the cojones to be that honest, because from there we can make magic happen. Whereas if you're people pleasing your coach, like, oh, I don't want them to feel bad. Hello, you're paying us for a service. Our feelings aren't on the table here. Like, that's people pleasing your coach, and that's going to get neither of you anywhere. So if you can't, if for whatever reason, feel that you can have the difficult conversation, then that might be a sign. Because what tends to happen is we bottle it in, then we explode, and that's in service to no one. That's the exploding doormat, otherwise known as the people pleaser, and doesn't do well.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. So just to wrap up everything, where I think we've covered so much today, which is pretty awesome. We really wanted to make sure that you had a feeling for knowing if someone is the right coach for you, understanding that gut intuition, whether you feel it as a knowing, whether you hear something that goes, yes, this is a good match, or don't do it, this is not right for you, whatever. There's different ways that we can sense. Trust your instincts, because if something is too good to be true, or sounding it, it probably is. And if it sounds like it could be a bit of hard work, well, it may well be, but is it the right one to challenge you? If you're really drawn to something and you don't know why, that can be for a very good reason, because it's drawing you to your challenge. or you could be repeating old habits. So have a conversation with the coach, see how you feel about what they offer, whether it's one-to-one single sessions, whether it's a package, whether it's a course or a membership or whatever example like that we've been talking about today. See what feels right, look at options to have a conversation, and then go with what feels appropriate for where you are, and listen to the feedback from them. Ask them questions too. Doesn't just have to be,
you're
how much
interviewing
is
them. Are they going to get you to help you get where you say you want to go? And if anywhere in your system you feel like, I don't want to do that, bring that up. Because I know, speaking from experience, the number of years that I hired personal trainers or dietitians or naturopaths, and be like, yeah, I'm not doing that. And then lying about what I'm doing in between sessions. And then I can see their frustration of, why is she not getting the results? Well, because I'm not being honest. Like, this needs to be a place where you can be 100% honest. And you could say, like this person said to me, I have a history of not following through. That's great. Let's kind of slow this down. I think that's the other thing to finish that we maybe said implicitly, but now I'm going to say explicitly. There is no rush. Like, if they're like, I've only got this one spot and sign up now, or you're like, and they pressure you, like, that's coercion, which we spoke about on our episode with Tad Hargrave. That's like, if there's a difference. So like, for me personally, I do have limited one-to-one spaces, but I'm never going to coerce you. If you do come back and there isn't a spot, I have a wait list. When I have an opening, we'll make it right. But if there's ever that inkling of you, it's like, I'm not going to, if you know at the outset, I'm not going to do this. It's like when you join a 12-week challenge and you're dreaming of the Big Mac you're going to have at the end. That's just a red flag to be like, maybe this isn't a fit. And I'm so, I wrote a newsletter just this last week for people on my list. It's a very long story, but long story short, I needed a doormat. All this providence happened, ended up with the most beautiful doormat ever. But like, I went to get it. I forgot. I was feeling unwell, all this sort of stuff. And it ended up, I turned around from the coffee stand, which I was buying for my husband. I don't drink coffee, no judgment. It's just not my thing. And I was like, oh, those doormats. Yeah, I actually came here for this. So if you're like, oh my gosh, without this coach, I'll be bereft or whatever. There's so many coaches. By you saying no in that situation, you might line yourself up perfectly with the person who's like, you're going to make magic together.
And if it just doesn't feel right timing wise or anything like you've just said, Suze, again, maybe the best coach for you is literally just around the corner. But if you say yes to someone that's incongruent with you or just doesn't seem like the right match, it's not going to get you any further ahead than if you waited a little bit to find and seek the right person. Because you may start now, because we've talked about this before too, you start now going, well, I'm better off doing something that's cheaper, that's whatever, working towards my goal. Now, sometimes that can work out for the better, but it's more unlikely. You'll end up throwing more and more time that you may not have, money that you may not have, whatever, and getting results that don't align because there's an incongruence there. Whereas if
Makes
you
me
wait,
think of a dinky car. Like, if there's a car you really want, or a vehicle or a holiday or some experience that you truly want, but for whatever reason it's not in the budget or finance. I don't like that term. You know, I always say I don't prioritize it, even if it is way off, because as soon as I say it's not off the budget, anyway, that's a whole story for another episode. But if you're not prioritizing the funds towards that right now, and you put it towards something else in a urgency or in a desperation thing, sometimes I'm thinking in the past of a vehicle I had that ended up costing me so much more because this broke, and then a few weeks later that broke, and then a few weeks later that broke. Then if I had just waited and done a bit more public transport or whatever for a bit longer to be in the right space, because it's not just about, like, you know, there's time, money and energy, and sometimes we want to speed things up by throwing money at it, and that can work in some circumstances. I don't believe it works in coaching.
No, I think the vast majority you'll end up worse off for it. So
it's been fabulous. How do you want to take us home, Kristan?
Absolutely. So if you have thought this through and decided you want to work with either of us, you can find information about how to connect with us wherever you're listening or watching this. There's always links. If you've really enjoyed it, share it with your friends, share it with your business colleagues, share it with anyone that you think might benefit from it. We've got many episodes before it as well, and many more to come. So we really appreciate it. The more that you share, the more that you give us ratings and reviews, it helps other people to find what works for them too. They might have stumbled onto us and they're not sure. So seeing some words from someone else who has watched or listened before can make a big difference. So we just encourage you to do whatever you can there as soon as you can. Just no pressure.
The other thing too, just sorry to interrupt you there, but with the review, I know for some people they get anxious because they want to make it perfect or they want to make it great. You can literally write a sentence or 2 words, and then later you've got the option to edit, because how often, done is better than perfect. So we're not going to judge you on your grammar. I tried to write tumultuous yesterday. It did not look good. The person knew what I meant. So we're not the grammar police or anything like that. It's the essence of the message, not how it's put together, that we really appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have any suggestions, if you loved this episode, please reach out to us through one of the channels, like through either of us. Reach out directly. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, also please reach out. And yeah, we look forward to hearing feedback from you and connecting with people in the coming episodes.
Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.